Hello, everyone. My name is Erich Mattei, and welcome to this episode of Akrinos Access. Y'all, on this episode of Access, we've got an amazing program lined up as we're here welcoming the one and only Mike Lyons. He's the founder and chief consultant at Seasoned Advice, HR consulting in eye care. Mike's joined us today for a really fascinating episode that's all about HR and your practice, the 5 pillars for stability and growth. Mike, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Access.
Eric, my pleasure. I'm so excited to be here, and yeah, let's jump into it.
Amen, man. And I know you and I, we've done a lot of work here together, working with practices, and it's kind of through this journey together that was really excited to have you on the show, because as we've discussed. And in our work at Akrinos, as we identify, human resources is one of the biggest needs of these practices, no matter where you are in your practice journey, right? It's a cold start or a newly purchased practice in the peak earnings growth years or approaching transition. People and HR systems are critical. So, Mike, again, super pumped to jump into this conversation with you. And to maybe tee it off, why don't you start by just introducing yourself to our listeners, and perhaps also maybe provide a little background on your journey in HR.
Yeah. Well, I am born and raised in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And, growing up there, I always knew I wanted to be of service to other people. And actually, going to college, I thought I wanted to be a therapist. I thought I wanted to be like a family therapist. And really, in a way, that's kind of a lot of what I do now. I discovered HR and earned my master's degree in HR and started my career in the Fortune 500 in the restaurant world. And I still believe today that the restaurant world and eye care have a lot of things in common, because people come to an eye care practice not just to get their eyes taken care of. And people don't just go to a restaurant to get food, but they come back for the experience. They want to have a personal relationship that has trust involved. And so what I do is I try to create win-win-win solutions, meaning the business wins, the employees win because they're growing and they're accomplishing their personal goals, and the patient wins as well. And so for me, that kind of ties up everything that I'm passionate about, which is being of service and helping others.
Love it. I really like that for I think 2 reasons. I mean, one, when you kind of tie this back to your core tenets and what you're looking to do, right? And that is to be of service to others and identifying this massive need in business, specifically on the people side, this HR side. But I think it's also really interesting what you said about it's the experience. And to our listeners out there, right, that's what keeps your patients coming back to you. Whether you've been practicing for 35 years in this legacy business, or whether you're just starting to get off the ground in your cold start, understanding it's that patient experience that's going to keep them coming back. So in the context of that, Mike, why don't we let's start to jump into this world of HR, because, it's often misunderstood to varying degrees. So maybe you could now, define HR and maybe itemize also what all is encompassed in the realm of HR.
Yeah, there's really so much to it. And I'm glad that you said that there's a lot of misunderstanding, because there really is. A lot of people think that HR is really just the policy police, and it's all about handbooks and getting people fired. And yeah, sometimes, we do have to fire people and we do have handbooks. And then other people think that HR is really just the pizza and the ice cream party culture advocate. And yeah, HR does that sometimes. But HR has so much more than all of that, right? We help hire the best people. We help you onboard them effectively. We help keep you out of legal trouble. We help coach you as a physician, as a practitioner, to be a better leader, or your practice manager. So just that day-to-day management. There's and that these are just kind of scratching the surface, but how
Sure.
you pay people and how you retain people and how you hire them and how you stay out of legal hot water. It's kind of the four, you know, some of the four buckets I might consider
Just
HR.
these are just small little buckets. I mean,
Yeah,
kind of,
well, those are easy,
there's nothing that could totally take down your enterprise
right?
if a misstep or something, a T were not crossed and an I were not dotted.
Mm,
I say that in jest, Mike, and you and I are chuckling, but I do want our listeners to know, y'all, HR is vitally important, and I'm sure Mike has many stories. And by the way, also, y'all, if you're not yet subscribed, Mike has a really really great newsletter.
mm,
Definitely go ahead and get signed on with that. You'll kind of see some of what I'm mentioning regarding some of these
mm,
horror stories that Mike has witnessed and helped practices navigate. But
mm,
no, it's fascinating you share that as far as like itemizing what all encompasses HR, and particularly a couple of things that you mentioned that from our world in Akrinos, this exciting parts of HR is where HR crosses these other aspects of the business, particularly whether it's on the finance side. So, Mike, you alluded to, hey, ensuring we're appropriately compensating our teams. Obviously, anything that's hitting finance, vitally important to the full functionality of the business. And then that second piece you mentioned regarding kind of this teamwork side of things. And I think that's also something that sometimes is overlooked as perhaps folks identify HR of being more policies, procedures, handbooks, slaps on the wrist, rather than seeing, look, HR is the core of these operations as well that's going to move the business forward. So, in the context of that, perhaps before we jump into the 5 pillars, just briefly, I mean, what are the benefits of solid systems, and then what are some of the consequences of
mm.
unstable systems?
Sure. Well, this is such an important question. The benefits are, you're going to have better revenue if you have better people. I mean, that's it right there. And a
Sure.
lot of people may hear that and say, well, what does HR have to do with that? Well, we're talking about the quality of the people that you have. Can you keep those people? Are they motivated? Do they understand their expectations? And when you start to think about all of those things that relate to management and HR, you start to realize, oh man, that is connected to revenue, right?
Sure.
So that's your main benefit right there. And then another thing is, do you want to come to work at a place? Let's say you're an optometrist or a manager. Do you want to come to work at a place where people are engaged and productive and the patients are happy, and or do you want to come to a place where you don't have great employees, that patients are unhappy and things aren't working right? Well, I think you'd rather the former than the latter, right? And so peace of mind is another benefit of HR. And just kind of the converse of that are the downsides. You can have major legal risk, you can get sued, civil suits, federal suits, federal fines. So those are some of the regulatory things. And then you just have employee turnover, the cost of replacing people. How would you like to walk
Man.
to clinic one day and your technicians are not there, your assistants aren't there, your front desk person isn't there because you haven't been leading right, you haven't been paying right. And so it's at the core of everything that you do.
Yeah, love it. And I tell you, I'm really glad you bring up that turnover piece, because that is something that, as you know, the work we do in Akrinos, monitoring finance and ops, it is absolutely something you can see the drain that turnover has on practices that are struggling with that
Mhm.
versus the benefits. Oh my gosh, those practices when that turnover is minimized or eliminated like a rocket ship
Mm.
across the board in the practice.
Yeah, because
So
people drive the results. Yeah.
okay, so the 5 pillars, and I know you and I were kind of going back and forth when we were emailing what we were going to dig into. And to our listeners out there, Mike was like, "Erich, only 5." I was like, "Mike, we only have 30 minutes, okay?" Um, but nonetheless, look, it's complicated to run a business. It's complicated to manage and grow and develop people in the modern era. So on that note, Mike, in your experience over your career, focus in HR, what are you seeing are the top 5 pillars for stability and growth through your HR functions?
Well, I think number one, the first pillar is really understanding what your core values are and what's important to you. And yeah, these might be common across different practices, but what is it that's personal to you? And put that into writing and make that the centerpiece of everything you do, from hiring to employee retention to how you communicate with your staff. And so, yeah, pillar one is really just knowing your values and putting that at the center of everything that you do in your business. And that's
It's oh, go ahead.
well, I was just gonna say it's so important because it helps to guide your decisions
Yeah.
every day.
And we think of something like core values and we think, oh, that's easy.
Mhm.
But then when you take a step back and you see to what degree is my business and how my team is presenting my business and engaging with my patients, to what degree is that a reflection of these core values? And that's where you come to see these big disconnects. And I think these days, where there's ever more, you know, technology quick fixes. I was having a conversation with a client yesterday about this, where they went to a piece of technology thinking that this new piece of automation was the quick fix, when meanwhile you look behind the curtain and we've got far bigger things, far looming things that are actually the root cause. So in tying the operations back to the core values, it's such a critical piece
Mhm.
with this. So what would you say? I mean, what's the mistake here? If we were to think of like, okay, core values as a pillar, it seems kind of simple.
Mhm.
Where do you see this disconnect, and how frequently do you see this disconnect?
Yeah. So the common mistake that I see, number one, is just using generic values, right? So, oh, excellence, integrity, everyone everyone thinks of that stuff, and that doesn't differentiate your business from another business. Number one. Number two, um, it is kind of just generic, and it doesn't really mean anything because people hear it all the time, and
Yeah.
it lacks action and specificity, and so people don't understand. Well, what does even excellence mean? Like, I don't know, what does that what does that look like day to day here in this optometry practice, right? And then how common? It's incredibly common. Almost everyone drank the Kool-Aid that you're supposed to have core values, but no one got the message that you're supposed to actually make them meaningful and valid for your business. So.
That's powerful. And I think also, as you're serving it up here as we're recording this, which to our listeners out there, we're recording this in the fall of 2025. Um, and we all know, something that's come on the scene here these last few years has been all this generative AI. And as you were just saying that, Mike, about these generic core values that really don't mean anything, perhaps we're seeing more of it as people are looking to use
Mm.
these tools to tell them. And if there's one thing we all know about the AI tools, they do not create. All they do is regurgitate. So it's
Mhm.
kind of fascinating to consider, are we finding ourselves in this vicious cycle where we're asking some sort of, whatever we want to call that thing, to give us something, and all it's going to do is just like scrub the universe and say, oh, these are the three most common things that people do. Like,
Yeah. Yeah,
is that really your core value?
so my advice here on this pillar is search yourself. Why did you get into this practice? Why did you start this business? Why did you start a business versus becoming employed by someone else? What matters to you? What do you envision for your practice? And then put those into descriptive words and
Mm,
action phrases of, like, this is what excellence looks like, in this business. We go the extra mile. We call patients when they don't show up. We provide little extras. We go above and beyond. Whatever the case may be,
yeah.
put
Yeah.
that into specific terms.
Love it. Love it. And to our listeners out there, if you do want to expand on this topic of core values, head on over to season-advice.com. You'll see Mike has a lot of really great resources, really great blog posts that explore a number of these topics. So, okay. So pillar number one, as far as like 5 pillars for stability and growth through your HR systems. Number one, Mike Lyons is saying, y'all, core values, identify them. And it's not something you just go ask a generative AI or you throw into an online community. It's you. Take the time to step out, step back, and reflect on that self search. All right, Mike. So, pillar number 2 for stability and growth through HR systems.
Well, this is that compliance element. This is that not so fun element that people always think about with HR, but you have to do it right. So pillar 2 is really complying with the law, understanding the law, and setting up structures so that you follow it. And so that's how you hire, how you onboard, how you let people go. And these get more and more complex the larger you get. They're
Yeah.
fairly simple when you're small, but they're still important to be aware of. Um, and anyone can get in hot water. Anyone can get sued. And so even if you have just 2 employees, you can still be sued. And so understand that. And it's so important because who wants to have, someone show up at your front door with some papers saying, "Hey, you're being served with a lawsuit by that former employee, or even worse, a current employee, because you weren't doing something correctly." And wow, talk about inhibiting your business and distracting your focus. You don't want that to happen. And plus, it just damages your culture, and the vibes will be off if you aren't complying with the law. So at least be compliant.
So in this realm, by the way, I really like how compliance is number 2 to core values, because I think often in this world of HR, people are thinking compliance, I just got to comply with the law and forget about everything else. Meanwhile, it all starts with core values. So I really dig that, Mike. So getting back to this whole compliance piece, what are these common mistakes? Like, what are the most common mistakes you see that are like the really easy fixes for people to do?
Yeah. I would say number one is make sure that you're paying people correctly. And so
Ooh, do
that,
tell.
they're clocking in and out, and so I'm thinking more about the smaller business here,
Sure.
make sure you have a system where people can clock in and out or report their in and out times. Make sure you pay them for any work that they do. There's no such thing as doing some volunteer time for the office. Um,
Right.
and even when you're onboarding employees, like that should be paid time. And so this is one of the most important laws in the United States as it relates to HR is paying people correctly and paying them overtime. In your state, Akrinos certainly works with people all across the United States as well as I do, and the laws vary by state. And so not knowing your state laws is a major doo-doo that you can step in. And so understand your state laws and comply with them because they really vary all over the place.
Yeah. Outstanding. So
Yeah.
y'all, look, y'all heard it from the source. Compliance. Compliance is vital, but compliance is second to core values. Let's start with the core values and then ensure we are compliant. I think it's also really interesting what you noted, and to our listeners out there, I'll remind you what Mike just shared with us. You can have just 2 employees and get served with papers for an HR violation. And I know typically we are seeing, if we think back in the not too distant past when the pandemic came through and some changes to FMLA and other guidelines, it's important to our listeners out there. FMLA, there's federal compliance, but don't think that just because you're checking all the federal boxes, you're checking all your state boxes. To
Mm.
Mike's point, it's really important you understand what's going on in your state to ensure you are in compliant there. Any other last thoughts on this whole area of compliance, watch outs?
Yeah, I would say as you grow, don't be complacent and think, oh, we just have to keep doing what we were doing before. Because as you grow, you become subject to new laws at the state
Sure.
level, sometimes even at the local level at your city. And these can be payroll related too. Like, let's say you expand to a new town or a new state. Are you registering in that new state to make sure you pay your unemployment wages there? Are you aware of the state laws that affect employees based in that state? Are you aware of laws that kick in at 15 employees, at 50 employees? And so just continually stay up to date. That's where an HR professional can help, you stay out of the trouble spots in HR.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And as we've touched on, while this can impact practices of all sizes, and no matter where you are in that journey, from a brand new, fresh, cold start or newly purchased practice, all the way through that established practice, anyone and everyone is exposed. But I think it is important that everyone also realize, to your point, Mike, as you start to grow, you may be crossing thresholds you're not even aware of. And that can get you some really, really hot water. Again, the importance of working with professionals in this that have your best interest centered. So, all right. So we're talking about HR in your practice, the 5 pillars for stability and growth, with Mike Lyons, Mike, the founder of Seasoned Advice HR. Pillar number 1 was core values, right? So we want a good, solid foundation of our core values. Pillar number 2, let's be sure we are compliant at all levels, Fed, state, and local. Mike, pillar number 3.
Yeah. So this one is going to affect a lot of things in your clinic, and that is your benefits and your compensation. And so what I mean by that is, do you have a value proposition for potential employees that is going to attract and retain them? And so, what's the prevailing wage in your market? Can you offer benefits? And a lot of practices don't think that they can when they really can. And are you competitive, right? And do you help your employees to grow over time? So it's not just the money in the pocket, but it's the benefits and it's the growth that happens. So this is really about the whole value proposition that you're offering to your employees, from the hard cash to the growth and the feel good that comes with growing and having a nice title and having a great workplace to work at. So the compensation is more than just cash. Yeah.
Yeah. It's you dropped a number of really, really solid pearls in that. First and foremost, to ensure that you're realizing that it's a full package. It's not just a wage. What is the broader value proposition for somebody to come and be a part of your business? And through that, there's something else that you touched on, Mike, and that was the degree to which small businesses, and many of these practices are small businesses, right? Less than 100 employees, or however we define small business, which, what is the definition? I know sometimes some people say small business less than 500, others say small business less than 20.
Nobody knows, Eric.
Sure.
Nobody knows.
Locally owned and operated practice. To our listeners out there, to our optometrists, to our ophthalmologists, you got your private practice, you're employing, 4 or 5 employees, 25 to 30 employees, maybe upwards of 100 if you're, massive with multi-satellite locations and such. But what it all ties back to, and it's something that we've seen also, Mike, so I really like how you mentioned this, and it is the degree to which the practice may be able to afford more for their people than they're currently investing in. And I tell you, Mike, the work we do in Akrinos with analyzing and doing monthly business reviews across not only operations, but also finance, man, that's where we identify these dollars. To our listeners out there, if you're thinking, man, I would love to pay my staff more, Mike, Eric, but I don't know where the money's going to come from. Go look at your financial report, and I'll tell you, if your COGS are 30, 32, 35%, and your HR is only like 13, 14, 15%, y'all, we just found the money. Let's go. Actually, we've more than found the money with how we can get those COGS down, so we can free up these dollars to take care of our team and our people. Really, really solid stuff around benefits and compensation, Mike. So on to pillar 4. Again, y'all, we're hanging out with Mike Lyons from Seasoned Advice. We're talking about the 5 pillars for stability and growth through your HR systems. Pillar number 4.
Pillar number 4 may be the most important one. I think they're all equally important, really, but I'm going to say this one may have an extra asterisk next to it, and that is your hiring. How do you
Ooh.
hire and who do you hire is critical. And people often give it short shrift because, maybe if someone that currently works for them throws a resume on their desk, or maybe you're starting up your practice from a cold startup, and you've got somebody at church or a friend at the coffee shop is like, oh, I know somebody. And you just kind of hire whoever's handy without truly vetting them and looking at all of your options. And so hiring is so key, because when you make that hire, you're not exactly stuck with that person for a while, but you could be stuck with them, right? You're making a key decision of who's going to be the face of your business, whether they're a technician or front desk or billing, or maybe even a fellow provider. You don't want to give that short shrift, or else you're going to be dealing with management headaches. You're going to be dealing with call-ins. You're going to be dealing with bad personalities, bad attitudes, and on the other side, you could be having an amazing person, amazing, welcoming front desk person with energy, who's always coming up with ideas and ways to improve the practice. You decide what you'd rather have. So, put the effort into hiring.
I feel like we could probably have a full episode, maybe even multiple episodes, just
Mhm.
on hiring. Who to hire, how to hire, skills, getting them on a path for development, right?
Mhm.
And just really, really great stuff. I think it's also interesting what you brought up, that what sometimes is the mistake. What's the most common mistake you see? And that's where hiring based on, I like the way you said it too. You were hiring based on who's handy, right?
Yeah.
So maybe it's someone from your community. Maybe it's a current employee says, hey, I got a friend that, is looking for work. And I think, Mike, that also brings up something that I know we touch on a lot in Akrinos, and that is being proactive in your business. And I think that's kind of what you're hitting on is, are we taking a proactive approach to our marketing?
Mhm.
Excuse me, taking a proactive approach to our hiring, or are we more reactionary to the hiring?
Yeah.
Proactive is, this is the role that I need. These are the specific functions of that role. This is how we'll compensate them, et cetera, et cetera. Then say we're going to hire. That's our proactive approach. That reactive is, oh, darn, I just got the 2 weeks notice from somebody. I need somebody.
Yeah. Yep.
And if that, by the way, I like how you just did that, Mike. Like let's do that.
I'm trying to, I'm giving you
HR
the thumbs
nightmare.
down.
HR nightmare. It really is fascinating, though, to consider how many practices out there are kind of stuck in this vicious cycle, right? And the starting point, hey, look, it's our listeners out there. If you are listening to this and you're like, wow, Erich, Mike, y'all are speaking to me like I am caught in that vicious cycle. Definitely, like you are the folks. If you are thinking that, if we've just touched on something, you have to reach out to Mike, because you don't need to be living like that. You deserve to take a proactive approach to your HR, get these true systems baked, and this is where Seasoned Advice and Akrinos work together, baking the systems into the broader ops and finance of the practice, and it's just a remarkable recipe for success.
Mhm.
Mr. Lyons, it's all led to this. Number 5, right? So pillar number 1, y'all, if you're just joining us, HR in your practice, 5 pillars for stability and growth. Pillar number 1 was core values. Start with your core values, not what ChatGPT is going to tell you, not what the Alliance Buy Group is going to say, oh, these should be the core values. No, this is your business, your core values. Number 2, compliance. Y'all, don't try to skirt around, save a couple dollars here or there by not ensuring this. Trust me, the ramifications of being served papers or getting a fine from Fed, state, or local is far more than a couple of bucks here or there to be sure that you're getting things taken care of. Number 3, benefits and compensation. Mike, we may have you come back on another session, another episode of Access specifically to unpack benefits and comp. Then 4, hiring. How and who are we hiring? All of that to lead to pillar number 5. Mr. Lyons, what you got?
Well, pillar number 5 is, man, it's important. And it is the leadership, your day-to-day leadership, how you comport yourself as a provider or a clinic manager, and how you communicate and how you treat people. And because nothing will erode your trust faster and will make your staff run away sooner than bad management. And so, get some management skills or hire someone who has management skills into your business, because that's what's going to keep people or drive them away.
Yeah.
So,
and I tell you, man, that is that leadership piece. That's like the curveball, but it's something that is.
A lot of providers, they overlook that, they and you go to school, you go to optometry school, you go to medical school to learn the technical side of providing care. You don't learn about management.
Yeah. And that leadership piece, and you mentioned it also, and I seen some studies, earlier this year, top reasons why people leave jobs in 2025. And yeah, that leadership or lack thereof is one of those top reasons why people leave, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what would you find for those listeners out there that maybe are reflecting, hey, wow, that really spoke to me. Like, I think some leadership piece, what are a couple things that they can maybe start doing just individually to start developing themselves as a leader?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, number 1 is start a gratitude practice for yourself. And you're like, oh, that's weird. Why do I need to have a personal gratitude practice? What does that have to do with leadership? Well, when you are really skilled in noticing what's going well and noticing what you're grateful for, and you fold that into your life, you are going to bring that into your clinic. And nothing can impact your day-to-day leadership more than appreciating your team and saying what's good. Hey, you know what, Sally? I just love that you're here every day, and I can really count on you. And that just means so much to me. And wow, I'm so thankful for that. I mean, can you imagine working for someone like that? Most people cannot, because it's so rare. So be that leader who appreciates your staff. And believe me, you can elevate your practice significantly just by doing that one thing.
Mike, that was solid.
That's it, man. I'm going to drop the mic on that right
there. Really, really fascinating stuff. I mean, through and through here, as we've touched on, even the advent of so much change in business and technology. Look, y'all, these businesses, healthcare, optometry, ophthalmology, it's still people serving people. And the degree to which the HR functions of the practice are just so critical to that human side. Well, yeah, HR, human resources, right? So, Mike, this has been a really, really fascinating conversation through and through, and kind of exploring what you see are these 5 pillars in HR, really the 5 pillars for stability and growth. Before we wrap up, though, I'd love for you to share with our listeners a little bit about the type of work you do in Seasoned Advice.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Really, what I do is help clinical eye care businesses provide professional level HR. So that includes recruiting, onboarding, being available to answer your questions. My ultimate goal is to help you hire better, retain better, and be more HR compliant. And if you can do those 3 things, you're going to have better financial outcomes without question. So that's what I do. I do it for clients across the United States. And it's what I love to do.
Yeah. And again, to our listeners out there, Mike has a wealth of experience in this arena. This ain't side hustle. In a world where in consulting, I know, Mike, we've also talked about this online, in a world where there's so many people that do what you do and do what I do, and it's like side hustle for them. this ain't side hustle, right? I mean, we're professionals that are approaching this to ensure that these results are being provided. And again, I would invite any of our listeners out there, no matter where you are in your leadership, your practice ownership and leadership journey, head on over to seasonedadvice.com. By the way, if you're listening to audio, it's seasoned-advice.com is the website. You can contact Mike directly via mike@seasoned-advice.com. And hey, if you're a fellow LinkedIner like myself and Mike, definitely connect with Mike in LinkedIn, subscribe to his newsletter. You will, Mike, you wrote one recently about an experience you had where you were working part-time as a garbage collector. And it's really just, as you were sharing that story though, and the learnings and how these things just apply to all these different aspects of business. Again, to our listeners out there, be sure you get set up, subscribe to that newsletter, connect with Mike. He can help get you going in the right direction with your HR. Mr. Mike Lyons, before we wrap up, any last words of advice or maybe just well wishes to our listeners out there?
I guess my number one thing is you can definitely improve your business through HR. HR is so much more than your handbook and how you onboard people with paperwork. It can truly transform your business, and I'd love to help any of your listeners out with this stuff, either on a project basis or on an ongoing basis. Or hey, just check out the website. I have so much free information on there that, gosh, people tell me not to give so much away, but I just love to do it.
Amen to that. Well, Mike, again, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Akrinos Access as we were unpacking the world of HR and the modern practice, right? These 5 pillars for stability and growth. But beyond that, Mike, just thank you for the work you do, right? I mean, HR is so vitally important to any business of any size. And it's a pleasure to have you on Akrinos. It's always an honor to collaborate with Seasoned Advice. When Akrinos and Seasoned Advice get an opportunity to collaborate. So, hey, to our listeners out there, thank you for tuning into this episode of Akrinos Access. No matter where you are in that practice journey, you can be proactive and really get out there and look at your business. The sky is the limit. Head on over to akrinos.com if you want to learn more about these different phases of the journey you might be in, or if you're looking for those business coaches to help you run a more profitable, sustainable business. On behalf of all of us here at Akrinos, Mike, thank you so much for joining us. And to our listeners out there, best wishes no matter where you are in your practice journey.